Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the one, the only, the greatest podcast in the history of NJSSL. Welcome to the Cutting Redge. We're back for season 4 of NJSSL basketball, and here with me today, I have the one and only guy who's probably the worst captain in history of NJSSL. He is known as AB. They call him Abbas Razvi. Please welcome brother AB. AB, how's it going?
Edge, my man, it's going pretty good. How about you?
Going excellent, going excellent. I can't complain. We're back. We've got, as Muharram is drawing to an end, we have the return of NJSSL basketball, one of the most hotly contested sports in the history of NJSSL. There's a lot of guys that are excited. We've got our draft coming up in a week. What are you feeling right now in terms of this upcoming season?
Getting pretty excited, But like, why did you diss me and make me the worst captain in history? I did some
I
good things
mean,
that first year.
your team was terrible. What are you talking about? I mean,
Did we get further than you guys?
you did,
I guess
but that's not because I was a bad captain. It's because, my team didn't show up half the time. Most of the time it was my fault. I only showed up twice.
you had
But
Hussein on your team, the cheat code.
what's that?
You had Hussein on your team, the cheat code.
That's true. That's true. He himself, he got bumped a few weeks, so that's what came and got us. But
Okay.
that's okay. It's that was season 1. We've come a long way since then. So alhamdulillah, we got to see how season 4 goes.
Absolutely. I'm
We
pretty
have some.
excited. Pretty excited. I myself been doing some mock drafts here and there. I take a page out of Hyler's book and do some mock drafts in the game. Interesting thing I
Well,
noticed that with 12 teams in play, it looks like the talent level has dropped slightly because of that. So let's see what happens. There are also some key guys that are missing this season. So let's see how that goes.
yeah, yeah. Well, with that being said, there's also 25 new guys this season who have not played basketball in the NJSSL. Though some of them are recurrent guys from football, so we will see how they'll be able to come into play. And certainly, there's a few new guys altogether. So it's an interesting season. Anything can go, anything can happen as per usual in the NJSSL. But with that being said, like you said, we have 12 teams. We've got 12 brand new captains. Well, most of them are brand new, with a couple of returning guys as captains. So I think today's episode, we are going to analyze the captains that have been chosen for this year's NJSSL league and season. So, I guess without further ado, I'll just kind of go through and list off the captains. And what we'll do today is we will analyze the pros and cons of each of those captains in terms of their ability to be a captain. We'll also analyze kind of what sort of key ideas and key thoughts they need to have in entering this draft and kind of what their strategy needs to be. And then finally, we'll talk about some recommended players that would make that team pretty successful. So without further ado, let me read off the captain's list. This is in no particular order. We've got Asad Merchant, Hassan Khan, Raza Abbas Khan, Syed Irtiza Mumtaz, Adnan Riaz, Mudassir Zaidi, Syed Zain Mumtaz, Ali Bobby Rizvi, Mazahir Dhalla, Ramiz Zaidi, Zain Naqvi, and Basil Ghaddar. So I guess with that being said, it's a lot of excellent talent in the amongst the captains. Why don't we start by talking about the pros and cons of each of them? Abbas, let's start actually just right at the top. We'll start with the number 1 pick, which I believe is said Irtiza Mumtaz. How are you feeling about Irtiza as a captain?
It's a very key guy. Always smiling. So that's a huge thing. So he's always a positive guy. Basketball wise, you never really think of him as like a basketball player, as a baller. So that's the interesting thing about it. But obviously, since he has the first overall pick, he's going to try picking, one of the top 3 or 4 guys, or who he sees as the top 3 or 4 guys. And that person with him will obviously, whether it be ZJ or Boss Heather or AA or any of the above, that'll be a key guy to pick. And then obviously that person can guide him going forward. But the pros with him is that he's always a very likable guy, very enjoyable guy, very positive guy. And so those are key things in a captain, obviously. And I think he could
Those are
also, hmm?
no, sorry. Were you going to finish your thought?
No, I was just going to say that those are obviously key things in a captain. And then Ifs himself is probably, knowledge wise pretty good. He's been playing since the inaugural 21 season. So he's just getting obviously better and better at knowing more people. So that's going to be huge as it is as we go down this list, experience factor and knowing people factor when it comes to the draft.
Certainly, certainly, yeah. And while he is definitely a friendly guy, and on top of that, he's a pretty athletic guy altogether. He sometimes does go under the radar in basketball. But the one thing that he's not really proven himself as is a guy who's kind of been in a leadership role as a captain, and so I think that because he doesn't really have the experience of being in that leadership role, like you said earlier, like he's going to need to draft guys who either were previous captains themselves that have drafted solid teams, or just like MVP players as well. I think in the first couple rounds, his first two basically picks need to, or I guess his first pick definitely needs to be a top guy, like you said, ZJ or Boss Heather would be two guys that have won championships before, and then I think from there he's got to go on to like somebody who, he's not going to have his next pick until pick 24. So he's gonna have to pick like at least another solid guy, like maybe like a Zulfi Kazmi, or depending on who's gonna be left at that point, or maybe like a Haider Abbas who may or may not be left at that point. But he's also need like a big guy, so like someone like a Fa or like a Shabazz might be important to get in that second or third round pick. What do you think?
Absolutely, these are definitely good points. Definitely good points. But if you go down to the captain list, you're pointing out how he doesn't hasn't been in that leadership role situation. You see a lot of the captains that your current team will actually come into play. There's a lot of guys who are new. You don't expect them to be kind of captain kind of guys. Then sprinkled in are a couple of veterans, who might have the advantage right off the bat, which we'll talk about as we go along. But you just never know. You never know. Football was kind of similar. In a bunch of guys, captains. You see
Yeah,
Shoja at number one. I mean, granted, he has the age on his side. He had Onzi at number two, right? And he went pretty far, even though he's another guy who has a little bit of age on his side. You just never know
yeah,
what can happen. So we'll just take it one step at a time. What is key is just the fact that he's been around NGSL even before NGSL, the Turkey Bowl. So he's been a guy who's got experience from that perspective for the last 5 years.
yeah. That's definitely a fair analysis. Fair analysis. Similar to Irtaza, but not quite him, but possibly the next best thing would be Sayed Zain Mumtaz, who is the number two pick overall. He's also another young, athletic guy. He's a few years younger than Irtaza is, but perhaps a few steps ahead in terms of basketball talent. He will, if you were to ask him, he'll tell you basketball is not his strong suit. And even last year, if you think about it, he had a very like well-rounded team that made him better. So ideally, I think for him, it's going to be finding that playmaker, and somebody who again was a former champion to basically help him put the team together, and find the right mix of players. And ideally, I think they in particular, not only does he need to find the right mixed players, he needs to find the diamond in the rough. So either one of the new guys that are joining the league this year, or being able to kind of spot somebody who is still there late in the draft that should have been drafted earlier. Somebody like that could be like a Mustafa Al Qasi, maybe an Ali Abid or someone like that. But we'll see. We'll see what they're going to be able to do. What's your take on Zan Mumtaz?
So Zain Mumtaz is actually a interesting, intriguing, if you will, selection as a captain. Him along with, because we get along to these other guys, Ramez and Basil were a couple of guys on this list. To a lesser extent, Ali Bobby, less guys on this list who I was actually surprised they were picked as captains. But it's NGSL, so it was interesting. I like the selection. Going back to Zain Mumtaz, he's a smart kid, young guy, smart guy. I've played with him obviously back-to-back seasons in football, and he's definitely an athlete. He's a talent. Basketball is not his game, like you said, so that obviously will be on the negative side. But he's got the number two overall pick. Between one and two, I'm gonna give a little preview for my future mock draft that's gonna come out at some point. I think ZJ and Abbas either are gonna go one and two. ZJ Tertaza, Abbas either does Taz. So I think that's a huge pick at number two. And then the combination of Zan and Abbas Haider would complete that draft. And I think what's key with Zan, he's another guy who's been around for a while. He's quietly under the radar. Yeah, basketball may not be his sport, but he's a brilliant mind, a young brilliant mind, and that's obviously going to be huge when it comes to coaching and taking your team a long way.
Yeah, it definitely could be. Unfortunately for the Chiefs back in football, the young and brilliant mind of Zan Mumtaz couldn't get them as far as they were hoping. But basketball is a different story, and we believe in Zan Mumtaz. Well, moving right along then to similar to somebody who was on the Chiefs. Now we're moving on to the captain of the Chiefs, Asa the Merchant. He last the when he was the captain of the Chiefs, that was the first time he was a captain, so he does have a little bit of experience there. Granted, a different sport, but he does have a strong basketball IQ. He does have good drafting abilities because he did draft a pretty well-rounded team there in football. I was actually the biggest thing about us merchants that I was shocked that he got the third round pick. Given that it was by skill order, I was expecting him actually to be the first round pick amongst the captains. But us the merchant has been, I guess, holding his own here in basketball. So we'll see kind of how that plays into things. How do you think that he needs to draft his team?
Yeah, yeah. So third overall pick you mean, but that is correct. What Assad and then Zay and Nakwi, who's gonna come later on in our discussion as well. Those two guys are the experienced ones and they're very knowledgeable ones and they've been around the game a long time. And I guess to maybe a lesser extent or maybe the same amount of extent, Raza and Hassan. But I don't have as much like experience in knowing those two the way I do Assad and Zayn. So with Assad specifically, he's my guy. I think he's gonna have a great draft. I think he's gonna. It's tough to say who he's gonna go with at three because there's gonna be a lot of options assuming ZJ and Abbas had to go first and second. But I think in terms of the draft order, it's tough to say. I mean, I think they might have done that whole thing with the tier one, tier two, so you just by chance which guys get the first pick, second pick, et cetera, et cetera. But outside, he's been around basketball for years. He's watched basketball. He's obviously close to 40 age wise, or up to 30s wherever he is. So he's got a lot of years on his belt. I mean, granted, yeah, he's not the best, greatest athlete, but he's got a brilliant mind. And he's got, in my opinion, the most brilliant mind out of all these captains. So that is huge. He'll draft properly. I mean, he'll get a solid first round pick, and then he'll round out his team pretty well with good group of guys, like he did with the Chiefs. So you got to keep that in mind. Chiefs were just basically one or two calls from going to the finals. So you got to look at it that way. That also did his job. It's just a matter of the players doing their job and everything else got in place. So I like
That's true.
Assad. Pros across the board. I don't actually see any cons with Assad.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No. Definitely. Definitely not a lot. That's for sure. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. Again, he's going to have the number 3 pick, so then he's going to, his next pick's going to be at like 22 or so. I think the big thing with him is he's just got to get similar to how he did in football. He just has to draft guys that have good that will are capable of basically developing good chemistry. Like so. For example, I don't think that like for Amendola should be the third round pick because I don't think Amendola and Usman Merchant are going to work well together as a cohesive unit. I think somebody like a Faisal might be able to work well with him. Somebody like an Adil would be able to work well with him. They kind of him and Adil already have a connection from football, so we'll see. I think one of those guys could go at number 3, but we'll see. And then I just to kind of throw it out there, I think Syed Daniel, he was a very solid player last year for the Heat. I think he would also be somebody who would actually work very well. Maybe not a first round pick, but definitely a potential second round. All right, moving on then to a guy who I'm very excited to see what he does as captain. Because he's in our hearts he's kind of like 12 years old, and so that's what we love about him. So it's my boy, the Miz Ramazedi. We're excited to see who he's gonna tell anything to. I will say with Ramez from Turkey Bowl 2021 to now, he's shown significant improvement from if you think about just basketball, from the days that he was scrubbing ZJ's boots, on the Lakers, to now, he's made tremendous strides, and I think that he's definitely earned his captainship. The concerning part about him is that he's just young, right? I don't think he's going to be able to tell any of the older players on his team like, oh, you're not playing well, you're not in the right mindset, you need to sit down. Like he's not going to be able to step forward and do that. But maybe some of the guys that he'll draft will help that. Certainly you have to think that he's looking out for somebody like Farhan Ehsan as his first round pick, given that they have the South Jersey, connection. Probably he's also looking to draft Sean too. But what are your thoughts on Ramiz, Babs?
Yeah, Ramirez is a very interesting guy to get in there as well. He's the youngest captain, right? I guess he's about 18 or 19. How old is he?
I think he's like 21 at this point, but yeah, sure.
Okay. Is he the youngest captain? I think like he's got to be the youngest captain here of all these guys.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Yeah, so he's another key pick, another Chief as well. So 3 straight Chiefs here, the captain status. So Ramirez is, I mean, enjoyable guy. Everybody loves the guy. Nobody hates the guy. He's he's like a perfect amount of low key trash talking. and he backs it up. He's been a solid basketball player, even though you said he scrubs EJ's, whatever his name is. Didn't he? Isn't he the guy who had that 3-pointer against the Knicks
He
back
did.
in
He
the
did
middle of the
have the
season?
the one buzzer beater three
Yes,
pointer,
yes, and then he did
So
have a couple 3-pointers against. He was on Ohio State against us and Gonzaga in the semifinals or whatever it was. That kind of almost put the dagger in us, but luckily somehow Gonzaga and Charlotte and friends came back. Of course, I don't know if
and
you remember that
and
one or
that's what I'm
not.
saying. That's what I'm saying. I feel like he was kind of an unknown guy on the Lakers. Kind
Mhm.
of had this one big huge play, this buzzer beater three pointer. Became known as like a 3 point guy. Did a little bit better the following season, and then this most recent season when he was on what I can't
He
even
was on
remember
the
what team he
Clippers, I
was
believe.
on, but
Clippers, I think. Clippers.
what was it?
I feel like he was on the
Yeah,
Clippers.
might have been. All I know is that like he definitely
He's very
stepped
quiet.
up like a lot. Yeah.
Mhm.
But anyways, well, so besides how great he's finally getting, how else are you feeling about him?
But yeah, he's definitely constantly improving. It's interesting to see. I mean, I have very little faith in Ramiz as a captain, which you never know. He's Ramiz. So, but I think you're right. I think he will go for Han, assuming Han is there at 4, which I think he should be. I believe Farhan also has some injury issues, but I don't know if, inshallah, that's something that's not going to affect the season opener or the season overall. But I think overall, they'll be all right. Ramiz somehow ends on like good winning teams every single time for the most part.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, so moving on to number five, we got Zan Nakfi. As we all know, had a very much a great leader, a proven captain. He's gone to the championships, kind of won it once, and then went back to the finals the second time and lost the finals there. So hasn't won the big one yet, truly, but is able to draft a well-rounded team and make it to the finals. The big issue with Zan, honestly, is kind of on himself more so as a player than as a captain. Is the dude can't last more than 5 or 10 minutes, but without having to sit on the bench, and that's not ideal for whatever team he's going to draft. So kind of as a result of that, though, I think he needs to draft basically young, fast, athletic guys that are that he can coach and that are young coachable athletes. So people like an Adil Gazmi, maybe Abbas Utter, guys that are definitely not going to have issues of like tiredness and whatnot on the court. Unlike the Bucks from last year. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, about 8 years ago, I think it was. So right now, Zan must be about 37 age wise. So 7, 8 years ago. I do remember Hayden, calling a washed up 30-year-old. So I remember that very well, actually. So now he's obviously 7 or 8 years older, but I think he's one of those guys that's going to have a bounce back season this year. I think he was on the Bucks. He was kind of and what I expect him to do a lot more than he ended up actually doing. And I think again, the tiredness was definitely a factor. The whole Bucks team was just obviously looked old at times, but they came alive and had a good run, almost made it to the finals there, even with all your dissing, of course. So but I think Zan has something to prove this time around. I think he wants to show he still has it in the tank, age notwithstanding. I think he's gonna make something happen. I think he's been working a little harder. Him being a captain now is gonna motivate him. But in terms of drafting and stuff, I don't know. I think he's gonna go with the if AA is on the board at 5, he's gonna go AA. So I think I think that's where I see him going. But it's tough to say if AA will be on the board at 5, of course. If AA is not on the board, he might go with one of the younger guys. His in the original Knicks, you have Adil, you got Morez. He might go fresh and try a guy like Saad. I mean, if he's on the board, of course. So let's see what happens. As a captain, of course, he's got the experience. He's a smart guy. He's drafted twice very successfully. Granted, in the one season at Gonzaga, he has Shark as the number 1 overall pick, so you can't lose there. A healthy Shark throughout the whole year. So speaking of Shark, hopefully he's doing well. I haven't heard from him in a while, so hopefully he's on the track to recovery. Shout
Yeah,
out to Shark.
lots of prayers
But
out there. Hopefully he'll be better soon to join us next season.
yes, inshallah. So what I'm saying is he had the Knicks team, he had the Gonzaga team, so he's proven he's solid as captain. He can draft well, even if you may look that his drafts are so-so. His drafts have come through twice so far, and I think this will be number 3 here. There's no reason not to. As I said, he's got the experience. So
Yeah.
Khan as a captain, no Khan. Pro is he's got the experience, he's got the the history.
There you go. There you go. There you go. All right, moving on to the next one. We'll try and speed it up here a little bit too.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
The next captain we have is Adnan Riaz. So honestly, Adnan, I just can't, I have no idea what he's going to be like as a captain, to be honest. I mean, the biggest pro is that in the same way Ertzai is, he's a nice guy. He's a very friendly guy. I almost wonder if he's too nice of a guy that he might not be able to make decisions under pressure, and that might be an issue that he might have as captain. But I think that for him, he's just got to gather guys that are mixed in terms of a few guys that are skill and finesse, and a few guys that are just like gritty old school ballers, right? Just like very like rough, tough. They're not afraid to get fouls. So I think like he needs to combine somebody like a Fitros Nasser with like an Ali Mirza, like just get them both on the same team. It's going to be a very wild team that he's going to draft. I have a feeling, but we'll see what happens. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. I think he's going to draft a wild team, but he's another guy who's not as old as like Xander Russell, but he's got some really good experience. He's a smart guy, so he definitely has a good mind. I think he will go wild with something like that. I think he wants to take one of his former teammates from the Blazers, whether it be Adil or Fitris or whoever may be available at that point. Maybe he might be Kamel. So that was a good team. So he's going to want to get those guys together, I think. He definitely wants to pull his brother in line too, but of course we know brother Mo Siddiqui also suffered a pretty serious injury. So we don't know his timetable. So he's a very unknown. So we'll just figure that out. But I can see Adnan going very wacky. I can't see him drafting Ali Mirza, though. Ali Mirza is a tough guy to play with, honestly. He does not pass the ball. We know that's Mirza's game. So I don't know if that would fit. I mean, in many of these captains' playbook here. So we'll have to see where Mirza goes on a side note. But he's another guy in the sound that also has some injuries. I don't think it's that serious, but he has some injuries, which I think might limit him as well on the side note. So let's see what happens. I like Adnan as a captain.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll definitely see. There's a lot of possibilities here. All right, moving on to the next one is Raza Abbas Khan. As we are getting to the second half of our captains here. So Raza Abbas Khan, solid veteran. He understands the championship level team. Like he was on the Raptors last season. He knows what makes a championship level team. The biggest thing for him is he needs to not draft guys that are not going to show up. Right. That's what plagued the Bengals in football. Is that you never knew who was going to be there, who wasn't going to be there. So I think
Me
that
too.
the biggest thing for him is just pick guys that are going to be there. As I'm like, just pick them. Like come on. So I honestly would say maybe pick like he's the guy who needs to pick guys that will not like they're going to put whatever other conflicts aside so that they can show up Sunday morning. So if Amendola is still there, he definitely should take Amendola because he's going to show up no matter what happens. Maybe somebody like Asad Rizvi against Zolfi maybe might be useful. Fa, I think all those guys will make sure to come. If they're able to come. So or like regardless of whether or not they're able to come. But what are your thoughts on Razabai?
Well, otherwise, he's a tricky guy. He's a very fiery guy. I just don't think. I mean, like he's a good guy. He's a good solid guy, but I just think that I don't know what happened with the Bengals. It seemed like they had a lot of locker room issues. I don't know if it was just the attendance. And of course, he kept dissing Q as being a struggling, WR1 and whatnot. That's a different story. But I don't know. Razak guy is a tricky guy. He's a tricky guy. So I think just the cons with him is that he obviously didn't have control over the Bengals. This thing just didn't work out with that Bengals team as a captain. The pro with him, he's again another older guy. I think he's learned and he will learn. He will have a wacky draft himself, I feel. I would suggest if he can, I think he should take a guy like Prof, or I think Prof would be on the board there, or Raza Ahmed. I think those are two guys who are attendance wise. I don't know if Sadim is another option, but I don't know if he's going to be available that late. Plus, he's also going to medical schools. I don't know what his actual availability is throughout the season. We'll
Wait,
have to take it
who
one step
who
at a
who,
time.
who did you
But
say? Who's the last
Saad,
person you
Saad.
said?
So first I said
Son.
Professor,
Yeah.
then Raza Ahmed, and then Saad Ahmed.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. So but I think Professor out of those guys for sure. He loves going there. Sometimes he has showing up with issues, late issues, and then the Jersey thing. But other than that, Prof is Prof, key guy.
Yeah, listen. If there's anything you've learned about Prof is that you can never just you never know what he's gonna do. One day he might be taking all sorts of crazy threes, and you question it, and the next day he's draining those threes like as if it was like water in the drain. You just got you know
Yep.
let the drain go. But anyways, so I know it's definitely a good option. So we'll see what Razabai has in store for us come this Friday. Then next we have Basil Ghadar. So this guy, I'm excited to see what he's going to do as a captain. He's definitely a decent athlete. I feel like he tends to fly under the radar a lot, and I think part of that is because he, in general, is just a very soft spoken individual, right? He's not like somebody he's the opposite of Prof. Prof's a very kind of loud guy, gets everybody very excited. Basil is quite a little bit of the opposite, and so kind of with that, you never really see any opportunity for him to kind of be like a leader. It's possible he might have in any of his team chats, but it's hard to say. So for him, my thought is that he would need a solid number one guy who is not going to be obnoxiously taking over the team, to kind of let him do his thing as captain, right? So people like Pete Monamazi, Hyder Abbas, Amr Kazmi, like any of them would be like solid draft picks, I think, for Basil's team.
Absolutely, absolutely. Basil's a tricky guy because Basil, I think I've probably spoken 5 to 10 words with him over the last 5 years. Just like salams, how are you? And that's the extent of my conversation with him. So just the way it came out. So he's like a dark knight. I mean, yeah, he's definitely a proven athlete. He's proven himself in both basketball and football, especially this past season. The football kind of came out of nowhere with that whole Titans team. In terms of drafting, I think you're right. You're right on with that. But he's another guy that, at least for the first round pick, I think he might, if Professor's there, go with Professor. I think that they have the Titans connection there. I just don't know. I don't know. Does he know enough of the players and the skills? I guess he quietly does. I think it's just it's hard to tell based on looks. But I think Basil will again, another guy who's quietly taking care of business. I think he'll be all right. But let's see what
I
happens. These
mean,
are
it's
the tricky
because
ones
the
to
guy
read.
always keeps a very straight face. It's hard to know what he's thinking ever because he's just very good at keeping that poker face.
Yeah, yep. He's another interesting choice for captain. So let's see what happens. I think you're right though on like guys like Morez, definitely be key. Abu definitely be key. Abu is probably gonna go fifth, sixth round, I think, this year. So just messing with Abu. I think you're for real, I think you're a third round pick. But for real, I think you're a third
Well,
round pick. I
that's
think you will go third round. Gotta mess with Abu,
who
definitely key
me?
guy.
What?
Abu.
Yeah. He should
Yeah.
go in the third round. That would make a lot more sense. But we'll see. Maybe he won't. I know last year it didn't work out for the Sixers, so
Yeah,
we'll
for the
see what
Sixers.
happens this year. All right. Meanwhile, let's move on to Mudassir. Mudassir is himself certainly very well versed in basketball. He's certainly very well versed amongst the players in the NJSSL, and I think that kind of gives him an advantage as a captain. Certainly, he himself is like a 3-point shooter, so he knows he's going to be looking for guys that will fulfill other roles on his team. The problem with him is that I think he himself as a player is very inconsistent, and I think that his leadership abilities are very, average at best, right? Like he himself knows what he's talking about, but I can't imagine like he's not somebody who's gonna like be able to advise his team and they're gonna listen. Like they're just probably gonna do what they want. So I think ideally he needs a team that's going to be able to get the job done without him coaching or advising or basically needing like a strong leader. So guys that basically run themselves, right? So Saad Ahmed would be, if he's available at that late into the draft, he would be an excellent person for him. I think someone like Farhan or Thorab would also be an excellent draft choice for him. It's going to be interesting to see where Thorab's where Thorab ends up because he you know his stock kind of just moves up and down. Like he's not been on like a successful team yet, but he is a very solid player. So we'll see kind of where he goes. But anyway, so that's kind of my a take for Modusser.
Yeah, it's very, very good point, Sam. I think with Duster, I think if they can get back that Rutgers team, at least Morez, if Jaffer falls to him on the way back or on the way up, whichever one, those two guys, if they fall to Mudassar, I think if they get that team back together with Mudassar as the captain instead of Morez, I think they'll have a lot of success because I think Morez had a lot of stress on him, I feel, during that season as the captain. I think, I don't know, last year it seemed like he just didn't really get it going in the Sixers. That's what I felt at least. So I think this year he's also poised to have like a really solid, strong year. And I think with his boy Mudassar, that'll definitely be key to happen. And I think, yeah, you might be probably right about the whole leadership factor. But if he has his boys, then that's all he really needs. And guys that he's played with, I think he'll try picking up one or two guys from the Heat as well. So we'll see. I think Hyder Nuffley will be key. Is Hyder Nuffley in this year, by the way?
He
About
is.
Hyder
He is
Nuffley?
in the league. Yeah.
He's,
Yeah. He signed
okay.
up.
So I think he'll be a key guy, and maybe if you can get in Imran as well, I think those would be key guys to add to the squad. Along with guys like Yafa if possible. Yafa, on a side note, I don't know where he's like one of the basically the only big men, I guess, this year. So his draft stock should be pretty high. So he might go sooner than we expect. So on a side note.
Yeah, I guess him and Kumail are basically the two. Well, him, Kumail, Shabazz, and Fa, I guess, are like the big men that I can think of off the top of my head.
But I'm saying
Um,
that Yafa
oh,
at
and
six
Prof, of
foot
course, Prof.
three, Yafa at 6'3" or 6'4", however tall he is. Guy's fast. He can shoot threes. He can play underneath. a lot of
Yeah,
matchup problems he causes.
he's probably the strongest big guy, that's for sure, or like the most versatile one. So yeah, we'll see where he ends up. All right, let's move on to Hassan Khan. We got three more captains to tear apart here. So next we've got Hassan Khan. It's interesting for me. I would have suspected Hassan Khan to actually have the last pick of the draft, arguably the second last pick. But he is going to get the 10th pick in this in the first round at least, and he's probably one of the few captains that are not only first. He himself being a potential first round pick material sort of guy. But he's also a veteran. He's very well versed in the game. He's definitely been around long enough to know what most of the league is like. I think one of his big cons is that he's somebody who gets very he's been seen to lose his cool very easily. So I think that as like a captain or as a leader in general is not necessarily a good. I mean, it's a terrible thing to have as a leader, right? You got to pretty much always be keeping your cool. So we'll see. I think for him, like he's going to need to get a ball handler. He's going to try and get a playmaker. And I think more importantly than both of that, he needs a second older guy on his team to basically help him keep his cool should he lose it. So I think guys like Syed Ali or Sajjad Al Casey would be excellent, like first second round picks for him. Maybe and then at some point he should get somebody like an Asad Joffrey or a Nabil Ahmad to kind of basically help him stay focused.
I don't know if either of those two guys, maybe us and Joffrey, but I don't think Nabil Ahmed will help him stay focused. Nabil Ahmed's usually in his own world. Um, but good points. I mean, like Hassan obviously has shown the fiery side, but I think now this year as a captain, I think he realizes he's also an older dent. He's a young guy, but older dent, comparatively speaking, relatively
Yeah.
speaking. I think he understands that he's got to take on more responsibilities here. But you're right though. If he gets one other key guy, older guy, whether it be like these guys you mentioned or any other above 40 guys like myself, that can just help kind of calm things down. And also help with the capping, coaching, that side of things as well. And that way he can kind of just focus on playing because himself, Mudassir, Ali Bobby, and Mazire, I think they're since this is a snake draft, they're located pretty nicely from 9 through 12 because they're going to get pretty solid picks on the way back. So they should all get obviously a first solid pick, and on the way back they're also getting another top guy. So I think they're located nicely. So Hassan has a good potential. Even Bobby and Mazara, we talk about them, to form a good solid big three. So yeah, no, I don't know if it's tough to say who Hassan's gonna mesh with. So I don't know if he's gonna mesh with the guy like maybe Sajjad Al Casey, but I feel like he's meshed really good with the Blazers the last year. So if you can get one of those guys, whether it be Fitris or Adil, at least one of those guys will be there, or Kamil. I think that would be huge for him. We'll see.
We'll see. I mean, I think, yeah, certainly. I think he probably didn't have to worry about meshing. I mean, super, well last year since he was just kind of a smaller part of a larger team. But now he's the guy in charge. So we'll see what happens. All right, moving on. I'm very excited for this one, Mr. Ali Bobby Rizvi. So Bobby is great, man. He's a interestingly rated guy because he will have days where he will just be chucking up shot after shot and they'll just be terrible shots. And they shots he has he's no right to even be taking. But then other days he'll just kind of, especially like when his team is there, they've got good ball movement. Like he'll take excellent shots. He'll be very smart with the ball. So he's just kind of he's a little bit he's like bipolar, but like in basketball, So it just gets both sides at any given moment. As we've seen in football, like and in previous seasons of basketball, he can get a little cocky at times, he can get a little hard headed. But but he's always focused kind of on winning the game. I think what he really needs, you know, is basically another strong player who can also kind of help him be a co-leader, and really somebody who can basically kind of make it easier for him to lead, by basically picking up some of that responsibility. So I think again for him, actually, I think the ideal guy for him would be somebody like an Irfan Zaidi, but maybe like a Saad would also be useful for him. Maybe like a Kumail Kazim would be useful for him as well. Go ahead. What
Yeah,
are your
I mean, I have
thoughts?
no idea what to expect with Ali Bobby over here. What I do know is I don't think he's going to pick any of the guys he played with last year. Well, maybe Sajjad, but I can't see him picking Mehdi or Sayed Ali. I think he might go with On. Of course, he might go with Chavez at some point as well. But I think Irfan is the key guy for sure. So I see Irfan going to Ali Bobby at number 11. The other guy who I think he should consider could consider would be Yafa if he's available. I think that would be a good, maybe a good suit. And then of course On. I don't know. On's a little tricky to predict where he's going to go. You know, he's a good solid player. He's got IQ. He's got experience. It's just I don't know if he goes in the second round, but I think Bobby and On would be a good. I mean, those two guys would be good along with Irfan as a compliment. But I think he should go with a big guy with his second pick or his first pick because right now he himself is like a smaller guy, at least not in terms of height, but in weight. And if he goes to
Right.
Irfan as a snuggle, like shorter guy. So you need height. I think you need height. You need one at least reasonably solid guy. That's the problem which I complained about on the Bucks. We didn't have a big solid guy. That makes a difference.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely, and they're definitely
Interested though,
far and
interested to
few.
see Bobby, and how he is as a captain.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. We'll have to certainly see. It'll be interesting. But yeah, big guys certainly far and few between. So they're definitely a hot commodity. You gotta grab them while they're hot. And with that being said, we're gonna choose a guy who's definitely can get very hot at any given time on the basketball court. He is another, if he wasn't captain, very reasonably should be considered a potential first round pick. Usually he goes second or third round, but I think that last season each progressive season he just gets better and better. And I'm talking about the one and only Mazahir Dalla. So he is definitely a well rounded player, definitely a very skilled veteran. Has he hasn't had like that. I mean, he's definitely had a couple of games, but he hasn't had like that season where he's basically cemented his dominance. But I think that now being a captain, I think he should be able to do that this season, especially if as we've kind of talked about the competition in the league maybe being a little bit less this season compared to last season. So I think his main goal, I think, is to be able to earn the trust of his team, and basically find guys that he thinks are going to be able to follow his leadership. I think he is definitely capable of being a good leader, but he needs to find guys that'll kind of trust him. And so for him, I was actually thinking Raza Ahmed would be an excellent pick. I think Kumail would be an excellent pick. I threw Professor on there as a potential first round pick too, because I think that the combination of him and Professor would work very well. But we'll see, or like a Yafa, any of those guys. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Mazahir?
Yeah, he's another kind of a quietish type of guy, but he's a very solid athlete. He's very good at basketball, and he's just another like smart guy. So I agree, though. I think Raza Ahmed is a perfect match for. It seems like at least he's also another fellow quiet guy and stuff who just goes and takes care of business, plays hard every time, and he's proven he's been a pretty strong player every year. Obviously, these guys were Clipper teammates last year, but I think that'll be key. Prof, I don't know if Prof will hang until number 12, so I think obviously if he does, yeah, that could be an option. But I don't think Prof will go that late. But again, you never know with these guys. Overall, I like Mazire. He's getting better every year. I think he will get even better this year as a captain,
Yeah.
like you said. Um, Negatives from Mazire, I don't know. I guess he's also another guy who may not know a lot of the players, but that could be a pickle with basically anybody on this list. I think for the most part, minus a few guys like Zan, Assad, these kinds of guys. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I like the outlook for Mazire. I think him at 12, it's tough to say because I feel like if you're going based on like skill level, you're right. I think Hassan should actually go 12. I think him or Bobby, I guess, and I would drop Mazire down a little bit, but I guess that doesn't really matter at this point. So let's see what happens. Mazire is another guy I'm rooting for, a very likable guy. So that's huge.
Yeah. All right. Now, here's just a few. Just we're kind of winding down towards the end of the podcast here. So here's just a couple last final questions here. Um, based you personally, Abbas,
Mhm.
which captain would you want to play for the most? Out of all these guys.
That is a very good question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm Reg. I bring you the tough questions.
You
Yeah,
know,
tough.
I think I want to play for our boy Hassan Khan, HK. Because he's a fiery guy, and sometimes I become like a fiery guy at times. I get excited.
As we were talking about him getting fired up, the only thing I'm thinking is the one guy who should not draft is you. Maybe
Well,
Shy.
I think I've gotten like better over the last as each season has progressively gone. I'm still pretty like fiery here, but I've gotten better. I'm improving, in my
I
opinion.
mean, you've gone from winning, the award for beating up guys to, to not doing that. So I guess that's improvement.
There you go. Yeah, look at it that way. So anyway, the answer is Hassan Khan. For that reason.
All right, excellent. So then the next question is, if there's any one of these captains that you absolutely do not want to play for, who would that be?
Um, let's see here. I mean, everybody looks pretty good. I would say I'm gonna stick with the family and go with Raza Khan. Yeah.
Well, why is that?
I don't know. I just think he's gonna struggle and pull a Bengals round two here. Like how a lot of people are dissing Ahmad Ali for his poor drafting skills. I feel Raza Khan is subject to similar dissing. This year
if
with his
if
drafting.
Ahmed Ali finds a way to last till around 7 or 8, whenever Raza's pick is, I'm
Seven.
certain he's going to pick him, and that team's just going to be a disaster. But we'll see what happens. But
Excellent.
okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yes, sir.
Oh goodness. All right, excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. Well, any final thoughts for this episode?
Yeah, I want to give a couple of guys who I thought were kind of sleepers in the draft. But should I maybe bring that up in the our future episode that we're planning on doing? Or if I toss them out right
Yeah, we can. It's up to you if you want to toss it now or later.
now. Okay, sounds pretty good. There's this one gentleman named Ali Asghar Ali that probably very few people know about. But, I mean, listen,
What?
Ahmad Ali. If you go back to the days of the inaugural season, nobody knew who Ahmad Ali was. And I was trying to explain to everybody that Ahmad Ali is, he's an older guy. At that point, he must be like 32 or 31, however old he was at that point. And he's a dominant player. He's playing basketball all his life, and this and that. And I'm telling you, he's even better than ZJ. I was telling everybody that, and people were kind of stunned because they never saw him and didn't know who he was. So anyway, so obviously we all know who Ahmad Ali is now, right? So Ali Asghar Ali is not to that level, but he's up there. So I would say he's like maybe a poor man's Hassan Khan.
Okay, I mean, if you say so, we'll see what happens as the season comes. Since you're very pumped about AAA, as one might say, since we already have AA, then maybe Shabir Ali, aka his son, might be somebody even more worth watching. But we'll see. You never know with some of these new guys that are on the roster. So hey, like I said, there's 23 other guys that have not played basketball in this league yet, so anything could happen. That's at least 2 rounds of guys. So
Sounds good. And then the last thing I want to also say is we didn't actually mention, maybe you did, you might have at some point, but I don't think we gave him enough attention because Abbas Utter, he quietly took care of business for that Spurs team, especially after Shara got injured. I remember when he played us, the Bucks, he put up like 25 or 30. The man was on fire. So I don't know where he's going to go in this draft, but I do have him going, obviously, in the first 2 rounds. But he could also sneak into that first round. But
yeah,
I would like to see some more dominance from Abbas Utter as well.
yeah,
As the season
he was definitely a very kind of like under the radar guy last year and made a name for himself for sure. It's interesting that you kind of pointed him out because Thorab was also on that team and. Between the two, basically led the way, but it seems like Thorab's stock he seems to fall each year, and maybe Abbas Atter's stock is definitely going to rise after his performance last season.
I think Thorab got like the Hyder curse. If you remember, in Thorab's rookie season, Hyder really hyped him up. I believe I recall in the description of Thorab, he said, he's even better than ZJ in AA. Please draft him first. And luckily, Zam Nutley did not draft him first. I think it was that draft. Yeah, it was that draft. Where Heather was the captain, drafted him at number 3 or 4, wherever we drafted him. So anyway, I don't know if that was the Heather curse or something because Thorab's has kind of been dingling since that season.
Yeah. Definitely, it definitely seems that way. So I
Yeah.
guess we'll see what happens with this season. But all right, excellent work, excellent work. Well, those are your captains for this season. Well, we're definitely excited to see what they have in store for us come the draft, come the rest of the season. I'm certainly we will try and get as many of different captains and just different players on the podcast as well. Boss, thank you for your time today, and inshallah, we look forward to having you back. We will be doing another episode to be released ahead of the actual draft, where we will be doing, I guess, the official, unofficial, I don't know, mock draft for the NJSSL. So we'll be at least doing the first 3 rounds of the draft in that mock draft. So stay tuned and look forward to that. Inshallah, that'll be coming out in the next couple of days. All right, excellent. Excellent. Yep. All right. Until then, guys, Shabbat Khair, and inshallah, we'll see you all real soon. All right. That should have stopped the recording. It looks